I hate my body sometimes. Yeah, and my glasses broke. And my computer's gone. So the universe just really likes me today. Damn. Questions or anything? That's right. I sure hope so. Should we turn the lights on? Ooh, nice cap. Oh, thanks. Nice job. What's this stuff?
I think the string.
All right, well, welcome everybody to the panel on the Poetics and Politics of Place. My name is Richard Simpson. I coordinate the program. This semester, my students and I have been focusing on the ways in which environment functions as a political practice. And practitioners and scholars in geography have approached or responded to this idea by developing new methods for analyzing the way in which landscape structure creates, as well as limits, possibilities for identity, as well as forms of community. We wanted to share a few sort of keywords and a few sort of examples of how this works as a way to begin a discussion of the way in which this affects our own lives, as well as lives in Alaska. My students here are Khrystl, Morgan, Eva, Shelby, Eli, and Mark. They range from first semester to fourth semester students here at, first year to fourth year students at UAS. For many of them, this is their very first public presentation. So please join me in welcoming the critical geographers.
Hi, I'm Khrystl. I'm a senior in the Geography and Environmental Resources program here at UAS.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm also Geography and Environmental Studies with a minor in anthropology. This will be my senior year too.
And as the openers, we're going to try to ground some big terms we've talked about throughout the class, and we're going to do this through a series of stories we're going to tell you.
Starting with the sci-fi sounding concept of time-space compression, basically, as the mode and speed of travel advances, the way people experience time in between their destinations is altered, therefore changing the way people experience time overall. For example, let's go back to the mid-1800s, and people traveled the Oregon Trail via horse and buggy. Traveling from Missouri to Oregon, the trail took them 4 to 6 months. The railroad completely changed the traveler's experience. People could just hop on the train and be at their destination across, the train completely changed the traveler's experience. People could hop on the train and be at their destination across the country in a matter of days rather than months. The space in between destinations became scenery instead of the harsh environment that travelers once endured. Now with airplanes, travelers can be at their destination around the world in a matter of hours. As travelers soar through the clouds, they don't even have to think about the space in between. You can go to the airport here in Juneau and get tickets to Costa Rica with a travel time of 13 hours and only 2 stops. This ability to travel anywhere in a matter of hours has literally shrunk the world. It has also changed the way people experience time overall in their everyday lives.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to modern day. This object is an art project known as the homeless vehicle. It's designed for the homeless, complete with a sleeping chamber, storage space, and it's completely mobile. And this mobility is going to be key as we move forward. The time it takes for a person to get from point A to point B is a distinctly geographic question, and one that has changed enormously over time. Think about getting from here to downtown Juneau if you had to walk. It's about 14 miles, and with a lot of ice along the way. Would you do it? Probably not. Now, if we have a car, the space in between is not a big deal. The car allows for the space, the 14 miles, to feel compressed. The time it takes to get there is greatly decreased, and the significant comfort gained from traveling in a car versus attempting the journey on foot makes this 14 miles seem like less of an issue. Now, back to the homeless vehicle. Many homeless tend to push carts around or carry all their belongings on their back. Each night, they need to set up where they're going to sleep, and every morning they pack it up again. A very time-consuming process. With this vehicle, the individual can spend his or her time doing other things. The way they experience time has changed. Time-space compression. This story illustrates the theory of time-space compression, and that we see as our ability to traverse space becomes more efficient, the way we account for time and spend our time also evolves. Now, the homeless vehicle is not a solution to homelessness. It merely treats the symptoms of other political, economic, and social issues at hand. But what the vehicle does do is make the problem of homelessness visible. If every homeless person had one, the streets would be lined with them. It also grants the homeless person the privilege of movement. The vehicle allows the individual to go places that would have been too cumbersome to get to before. Homeless people tend to stay in one physical location, typically in built-up urban areas. The vehicle allows for movement, which in many ways the individual does not have due to their socioeconomic status. The ability to move many take for granted, but movement and mobility are major players in society. Geographer Doreen Massey proposed the concept of power geometry, which advocates for a politics of movement. I'd like to share a quote that illustrates the politics of movement. There is power in relation to the flows and the movement. Different social groups have distinct relationships to this anyway differentiated mobility. Some are more in charge of it than others. Some initiate flows of movement and others don't. And some are more on the receiving end of it than others. Some are effectively imprisoned by it. Who you are in society, based off of gender, sexual orientation, economic class, race, affects how you move and experience society. Effectively, where you fall in the power geometry determines how you experience and live through time-space compression.
Again, I'd like to go back and talk about this concept of power geometry and the politics of mobility. Juneau is an interesting place when it comes to politics and mobility. Who has mobility to come in and out of Juneau? Due to the fact that Juneau is only accessed via airplane or boat, mobility requires a great deal of social capital. First, a person has to have access to technology such as smartphones or computers. They need to know how to book a plane or ferry ticket. They also have to have the finances to afford a ticket, not to mention that seats on an airplane and space on a ferry are limited. These two concepts have allowed me to see the cost and benefits of building the connection road of Haines to Juneau much differently. Last year, my grandma was in the hospital and my mom told me that I should come home to say goodbye. I looked at plane tickets, but due to that availability of seats and the cost of the plane tickets, that wasn't an option. So then I waited at the ferry to see if I could get on there. There wasn't enough space, so I wasn't able to leave. This story, stories like mine happen all the time in Juneau. People can't leave. Mobility is very limited. People's mobility determines how they experience time and see themselves in the relation to the rest of the world. Living here in Juneau, your social capital determines your mobility, very much so.
So why do these concepts matter? And by understanding these concepts, what can we do with them? Power geometry and time-space compression are important because they allow us to understand mobility as a political issue. And if we understand mobility as a political issue, we can look into different solutions as to how to solve this issue. Now, the other panelists are going to offer more examples of applications of these terms. And in my final for this class, I'll be researching how a place, such as downtown Juneau, can become a hub for specific subcultures. I'll follow the threads of power geometry to see how movement methods we have today help facilitate the growth of such subcultures. So next we have Eva, who's going to talk about these concepts related to the construct of nature ideologies.
Hello, everyone. My name's Eva Bingham, and I'm a junior this year, and my degree is BS Geography and Environmental Resources. Today, I will be analyzing and providing some relief of the social issues surrounding the topic of nature. Analyzing this topic through a critical geographer's point of view, I will be explaining some new concepts that I have learned so far in this class. In my best ability to help you all understand them as well, I'll be tying these concepts into a personal story. A few of these terms that we have discussed in our class are the ideology of adventure, culture capitalism, and verticalization of privilege. Nature itself is an idea. It's a continuously changing idea, and social construct has influenced heavily by cultural capitalism. In the beginning of the semester, me and a group of guy friends decided we wanted to go hike Stroller White, which is a mountain right behind our campus here. It's a little bit outside of the normal day hike around Juneau. We wanted a bit more of a challenge. On this picture, I guess you can kind of see it, that is Stroller White. Before we even started the hike though, the day before I was feeling a little anxious. Not because I was afraid I wouldn't be capable to make it to the top, because I was the only girl in the group of 5 boys that'd be going on this hike. It can be intimidating at times, but this anxiety that I felt can stem back to childhood. Ever since I was a young girl, I've grown up watching and listening to media that tells us how women are typically removed from the frame or denied a presence in the wild or in wilderness. In nature writings to TV shows, we see this gender bias all over. It's still prevalent today. As residents of Juneau, I'm sure many of you enjoy spending time outside. Nature to some is an escape, a way to get away from everyday life. We leave behind society and move into what we imagine a more neutral space. Yet, before I even started this class, I didn't realize how much cultural influence we are bringing with us when we actually go into nature. Here I am and many others taking with us our predetermined thoughts and biases with us as we enter into the woods. Once at the top of the mountain, we break, we take some selfies, we take victory group pictures, some Snapchats. I even had enough service at the top of the mountain to post on Instagram. This is my picture that I posted, me and the guys. This class has changed my views on a lot of things. This is when the concept of verticalization of privilege comes into play. Skyscrapers, typically built in city centers, are buildings built straight up towards the sky above all other city buildings. The usual person to work in these towers are those in higher class with power and educational background and money. Whenever I hike to the top of a mountain, I typically don't look below me and think about, wow, look at all those poor people below me. I've never really thought that. But at times, many times, I'll choose to post a picture instead, like this one on Instagram. This lets the social media world know the victory of my mountain conquering defeat. The skyscraper and mountain can both be symbolisms of privilege. Typically, the people who have the opportunity to recreate in the outdoors are those who have the extra time and money on their hands. The social media post of the mountain selfie broadcast to the rest of the world a person's social and economic standing and distinction among others. Therefore, what we may have at one time considered nature as a neutral space actually stands as a platform to increase our social class distinction. Like the skyscraper, a symbolism of wealth and power, a physical sign of class distinction, so is the social media post of the mountain peak. The idea of nature as a social construct has molded and changed throughout history. Raymond Williams, a critical geographer that we have read about many times in our class, wrote that we have lost interaction with our environment and instead use it merely for functional purposes. For example, we extract resources from nature. We use it as a cultural space to increase our social standing and enhance capital that derives on nature. We've designated wilderness areas and national parks as places where the typical middle to upper class individuals can go visit a place. It's a place for us to escape and enjoy leisure time. The ideology of adventure is a concept that Western notion of adventure, instead of being merely recreational, has always developed in connection with the larger economic interests of the era. I myself, using myself as an example, I like to go rock climbing. I love to downhill ski. I love to be in the outdoors, but this, like many other nature sports, demands technical equipment. I myself am constantly contributing to a capital that surrounds these sorts of sports and activities that involve nature. Big name brands such as Patagonia, Black Diamond are ways in which we buy into the outdoor capitalist culture. This is another form and where we use nature as a platform to show others our ranking in social class. Therefore, what purpose does nature hold if, in fact, in order to participate, you must fit into a specific class, gender system, race, and socioeconomic status? I ask myself the question, what now? The ideology of nature and our culture as a place to merely increase our social standing has left me feeling somewhat hopeless, kind of empty, because I love to do these things. Does this mean I need to delete all my social media, never post a picture on a mountain again? I don't believe this is the solution to the problem. The purpose of this class is to allow us to look at everyday life through a different lens. Now, I'm going to be more conscious than ever before as to what I decide to maybe post or share. The ideology of adventure and nature is an idea that has been and will continuously be changing. What we can do now, possibly, is to be more aware, realize, and open-minded to the cultural influences that we take with us wherever we go, even into nature and the remote areas in the wilderness. With that, I am going to be passing the baton over to Shelby, who will also be sharing a personal story and talking more about nature. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shelby Clark. I'm an undergraduate student here at UAS. I'm in my second year and my major is geography with an emphasis in environmental studies. Over the summer, I worked out at Kenai Fjords National Park in the Visitor Resource Protection Department, VRP. That basically means I was able to be the law enforcement of the park. It was pretty wicked. Being a VRP ranger, I was tasked to patrol trails, go on any search and rescue case that was reported in the park, and do specified trainings like ice field traversing, dunker training, rappelling and climbing, and getting my wilderness first aid certification to ensure I had the ability to answer questions as well as keep people safe on the trails. I met tens of thousands of people over the summer from all over the world. Every single person's interactions with the park were different, and I began to notice trends of the individual's relationships in relation to how they would respond to the park. This was a prime example of the impact of nature on a society. Groups from tour buses and cruise ships built back a sense of reality and fear when encountering wildlife. The tourism industry exploits nature and the animals within it for the industry's gain. By showing Alaska as an abundant land filled with animals that are harmless, the concepts and ideology of nature and one's own perception begins to change. The way civilization and nature correlate is not a harmonic balance. In fact, nature is the opposite of civilization. So from someone's experience in their society is a direct correlation in how they will respond to more natural setting. Over the summer, I came into contact with a lot of wildlife, including bears and moose. Growing up in a rural community in Alaska, this was pretty normal to me, and I understood the proper actions to take when encountering a potentially dangerous animal. My relationship to wild animals in Alaska is pretty relaxed because of how my community up north interacts with nature. Being outside and exposed to the environment constantly is a way of life for large portions of Alaskans. In situations like that, nature becomes an extension of yourself. If you consume off the land, it becomes an extension of your body. For people with a different society, these norms and customs are going to be vastly different. For example, I met this family from China that was touring Alaska by tour bus and cruise ship. While hiking one of the trails, I stopped to answer some of their questions, and suddenly a cow moose and her calf started walking down the trail ahead of us. Without hesitation, this family ran up to the moose and began taking pictures with the moose, putting themselves in harm's way. Luckily for them, the family wasn't seriously harmed, just shaken up from the fake charge the moose presented the family with. Stories like these aren't really uncommon. Everyone in this room probably has witnessed a tourist in the summertime getting out of their car to approach an animal on the highway to get a picture, or even out at Mendenhall Glacier approaching a bear. These examples are a representation of the social constructs around nature and of our own personal relationship to nature. While many things can tamper with our personal relationship to nature, it is based off binaries society share as a whole. From this, we realize how vitally important it is to recognize the way nature is exploited and observed. Nature affects everyone, and the ideology of nature is simply just the blurry line that intertwines humans and nature itself. When we understand nature and the role it plays in our lives individually and on a societal level, we can begin to break binaries that bind us. Nature doesn't see binaries, but the people who use nature do. The landscape and people on that landscape are connected, and so is everything else. From the animals that roam to the plants that grow, everything has a purpose and plays a role in a bigger picture that pertains to society. For my final project in this critical geography class, I will be looking into ethnobotany and the economic botany. These are big words, but ethnobotany is just how plants are related to the past, present, and future societies, and economic botany is how plants affect cultural and economic activities. I will focus on Eskimo potato, also known as machu, and study how the plant has shaped Alaska's culture, history, and the movement Alaska's indigenous population endured, eventually leading to the renaming of machu to Eskimo potato. Movement is a really powerful concept that affects everyone in our society. And with that being said, Eli, would you like to come up?
I would have loved to print it for y'all, but that costs money here, so it's on my phone. Excellent.
Where do you want to start?
I don't know.
There's not like a blank slide.
Okay, then just start there. That's good. Cool. My name's Eli. I'm a freshman here for botany degree, so I really appreciate Shelby's presentation. For me, I explore the extent to which the car has altered our perception of time and space. To explain such a claim, I extend Doreen Macy's power geometry and progressive sense of place to explain the concept of what exactly time-space compression is. Now, historically, as suburbs have grown closer to each other through modes of construction, better, faster transport, easier, faster spread of ideas, the suburbs also seem to extend themselves to be closer to the metropolis that can be seen in Shivelbush's essay of Paris and the suburbs approaching Paris, the metropolis. This is an act of what's called temporal shrinking. This can be seen in any development of any major city across time. Also across time, one can note the decrease in the literal size of different modes of transportation, from a train to a streetcar to a personal automobile. The individual's transport space has been shrunk around them, and this refers to Wolfgang Shivelbush's aforementioned term of temporal shrinking. The shrinking relates to the physical space around a person or society based on advancements, technological advancements that are constantly occurring. And since these advancements are constantly forever occurring, the term temporal is used, allowing room for change. When space and the human mindset come in contact, the space thereby becomes actively judged, creating a closer relationship from the suburbs to the suburbs over. Less room for the individual in the mode of transport means more room for displacement of said individual. Now, the temporal shrinking of transportation shows a direct relationship with the expansion of transport space. Integrating Shivelbush's and Macy's terms together, time-space compression implies a geographical stretching out of social relations over time, making the car takeover an issue for an anthropologist and not a critical geographer like myself. However, I am determined to do my best anthropologist impression. And analyze the space in which we gained through the loss of. Okay, perhaps that last part just sounded confusing, but let me explain it. Due to the shrinking of transportation that has occurred, car companies were left with a question. Okay, so we took away space, so how can we satisfy the customer in creating a fake space around them? Well, the constant city, suburb, and even the backroad country construction for cars have shown that we are willing to make considerable accommodations for the car. Okay, so this is Detroit in 1960. You can see there's a grid system, left, right, 4 main roads going to one central hub. Now, for time's sake, I won't get into a deep analysis of this. That's what my later lecture for is, my car, the frenemy. Check it out in your pamphlets, highly recommend. It's going to be great out here. But we have constructed cities where one has to drive. The grid system is made for the pedestrian, is made for the density of the public. And throughout time, as you can see, this is the same picture from the same area, but now our accommodations have been constructed and our cities have been made for the personal transport car. Proving temporal shrinking still alive and well. So the question still posed and still poses itself to every interior car designer about how can the individual space be altered so that the blighted city space in between the destinations becomes unconsciously compressed. The answer, blight the individual space as well. So what do y'all see in this? TV, okay. Leather, luxurious, right? Got a phone built right in the wall. Yeah, this is actually a giant iPad that Apple made just for this. No, this is not a private jet, but it is in fact the 2015 Cadillac Escalade. It's incredible. TVs, which some of us have in our minivans, a built-in telephone, which we carry our cell phones with us. So in fact, but we don't have, seats that face each other in the back seat made of leather. So I'll give you guys that. But, oh, Eli, I don't have a private jet for a car. I can see that. However, I do contend that your space is just as blighted as that of whoever may buy this 2015 Cadillac. Car companies have started marketing to target specific lifestyles, specific ideologies. Perhaps some of these may ring a bell. Trunk space, kayak racks, third row back seats for the soccer moms, the party animals, even voice command for the busy bees with the eyes on the road. The accommodations have become insane. And for a critical geographer's space, sorry for the pixels, but we have started to envision a future where driverless cars might make us dependent on technology in cars in a new way that we haven't even thought of yet. Now, to a lesser extent, since 1933, drivers have had, every one of you, every one of us have had the option to literally, listen to me, control our climate in our car. That's right, I'm referring to AC and central heating. This is, as you can tell, a major accomplishment by the car companies. If we go into a car without AC or without central heating, we think this is out of place. Are you guys listening to this? Okay, look, we have put ourselves in a position where we think we should be able to control our own weather forecast. Isn't this insane to you? And you don't even think about it. You turn on your heating, you're trying to turn on your AC, and you think that you have the power to control your own climate. It's insane. And we get all caught up in this and we miss the nature in between our destinations, the mountains, the pow trees, the clouds that we literally drive through, the sunset reflecting off the lake. It's incredible. And it gets compressed to a point where we as a species complain if we can't heat our butts when it's cold outside. It's become incredible. Clearly, you can see how our perceptions of mobility, time, space, and privilege have been significantly altered. So the next time you're fighting over aux or the radio channel, just remember that sometimes it's nice to prove a capitalist wrong and enjoy the frontier that they haven't industrialized yet. With that being said, I would like to bring up Mark.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? Everybody's mind blown. Yeah, it's a lot of terminology, a lot of good stuff. First and foremost, I would like to begin this by extending a big thank you to the Akwan for having us here on this land. Thank you very much. My name is Mark. I am also a student in the critical geography class. This is my junior year. I'm close. So basically, what I'm going to be asking you right now is, just by a show of hands, how many of you have used Google Earth? That's a lot of people. I mean, that's like 98% of you, I guess. All right, so you're involved in neogeographies. Neogeographies is just that. The use of technology in a new way to form geography. And what this kind of ties into, and what I've kind of focused on in my studies is the way that neogeographies goes into play in a personal way. I'm talking about the geography of emotions. So we've been talking a lot about the way humans incorporate spatiality and all the inner workings that go into constructing our personal and social lives. And a lot of the time, these scientific studies, they really rely on this epistemological works and studies. But the fact still remains that through all of this, we're talking about human lives. We're talking about human complexities and the emotions that go along with being us. So my research during this semester has been focusing on the geography of emotions and neogeographies as it pertains to the decolonization of cartography. The first step to understanding this is to understand that places in our lives carry emotion with them. It is the emotion carried by our own identity as people or peoples that make what may seem to others as just space on a map. It makes it places that are so meaningful to us in many ways. To exclude the emotions is to exclude a key set of relations that shape our lives and the world around us. So modern technology has propelled maps into a whole new realm. And neogeography is the use of those technologies, such as Google Earth, GIS, and tons of other map-making technologies. Neogeography places the power of maps back into the hands of everyday people. I see this as putting power back into the hands of those it's been taken away from. These maps provide a format for people to express their sense of place with others, and this also provides a format for political formation and, in turn, the mobility. Mobility is the key factor that is taken away by colonization. I'd like to kind of, oh, by the way, this is a map. I got this off of the borough's website. This is just basically kind of taking it back and placing the indigenous names back on the land. So I want to use this example. This is a student project. This project was done by Sarah Elwood and Catherine Mitchell, and this was an after-school learning program where the participating students were asked to map out their everyday geographies. So basically just places that they would, pass every day, places that they associated different things with. So when these kids were asked to do this, a lot of things came up. One young lady put there that, she passes a brightly painted house that she just likes to pass because she thinks it's pretty. Other kids kind of focused on a bus stop where they knew that other older kids sold drugs and it was kind of a no place to go and they avoided it at all costs. One of them was an eating establishment where a lot of the kids expressed that they liked to go and hang out with their friends and have a meal and converse with them. So beyond giving the students a format for expression, this map provided a platform for often unheard voices. They were able to see themselves as political subjects by gaining insight into places that drew on similar emotions. For instance, most of those students had a tie to that McDonald's. This is that establishment that they said that they enjoyed hanging out at. So, it was a place they associated with independence. One student indicated that they have a new rule that they don't allow any more than 3 students in there at a time. So through this, other kids got on there and said, "Oh, I didn't know that," and so they kind of started to gather and as a unified team because it affected a place that was emotionally charged for them. In another case, another student mapped out a store where he was kicked out for taking too long to order something. Unfortunately, when he was being kicked out of there, the owner says, hey, you're not in Africa anymore. So this kind of drew attention to that place, bringing other people into the know about this place. And they, that brought about a political formation. They were all sympathetic to that. They understood what it felt like. So we kind of did the same thing in our class. As I was presenting this, Dr. Simpson said, well, hey, let's run this experiment. Let's do this. Let's see where this goes and how we can tie this in. So each one of us went through and I asked everybody, what is a special place to you? Even though if you haven't been here for a long time, there's things associated with the time being here that have actually put an emotional charge behind the stay. And so remember when Eva was telling her story about the mountain? That's her personal accomplishment right there on top of that mountain. Shelby was in a car accident. She associates this place with that emotion of fear and kind of danger. Eli, he likes to go over here and run and kind of have a little thinking spot over here in Ock Bay. Khrystl, this is her roundabout from hell. Everything is spilled and everything has been toppled. And she's nearly died at that roundabout. So she gets that, there's an emotional tie there. And this right here represents Morgan's independence. It's her home. And she likes, it's her time away and, to explore her independence there. This is Professor Simpson's run. He likes to take the run on the docks at one time and then kind of that's his space. He knows that space and it's become place to him because he can tie that emotion of being there to it. And this is mine. This is the first home me and my wife bought. So that right there is, very much so tied into my emotions and my understanding of this place. And so you may say, well, why is this important? Production and sharing of these maps is important for a couple of reasons. One, it allows people to voice experiences, and along with that, the emotions that are tied to that place. But more importantly, it allows people to recognize ways that their experience may have been shaped by social categories and may be shared with others. This is an essential tactic in political formation. People no longer feel alone and they can mobilize and make effective change. So in my final project, I would like to explore the geography of motion and neo-geographies further in order to enhance indigenous cartographies. And it is my hope that through this understanding of emotion and geographies and this sense of place that we can take crucial steps toward decolonization of the map. So the next time, like Eli said, you guys are just driving around in your car from one place to the next, and to the right is just another mountain, or to the left is just the wetlands or whatever. Understand that those places, even though they become space to you, you may not see that emotional tie there, or may not have a direct impact on you. To somebody, those spots that are empty are not. To somebody, that means something to them. It could be anything. I mean, just pick a spot on the map and it probably means something to somebody. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. We appreciate it. And I believe now we'll be taking questions.
We've got about 10 minutes for questions. Feel free to ask anybody.
So, question for everybody. How do you factor or think about or account for whatever virtual spaces like Instagram, whether into time-space compression or into your own personal cartography of the world you live in?
I can. Okay, excellent. That's a great question. Yeah, the virtual space is perhaps the biggest contribution to time-space compression in the millennial age now. Compared to a car, you can be in a car, you can be in a classroom. I see it all the time in class. You can be in the cafeteria. If we're on our phone, the place and space of now has become disintegrated, completely compressed to a point, to a fact that it's not even regarded. If you look at the studies in New York City and China that are incredible, of how many people get hit while texting. Just walking. It's absolutely incredible. And this is due to the fact that they put aside this death machine and put aside the space that's around them and completely compress it into Instagram, text messages, whatever is on their phone. That is probably, in my opinion, the phone absolutely is the biggest contributor to the time-space compression today. Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel that things like Instagram, Facebook, they do leave that crucial element. It's like when you look at a map and you can actually see, okay, here's this place and this place. You miss out that you miss that time getting there. So just like in Instagram and Facebook, you can be sitting at home and it pops up. I'm like, oh, look where they're at. They're in some huge city. What about the space that it took to get there? You know, what about that time? It's not all, and that's one thing that I really am really kind of iffy about that sort of. It brings the emotions that it brings. It brings all positivity, like, oh, look what I'm doing. I'm here. I'm there. You know, but how did you get there? You know, and what social factors, what personal factors were incorporated into getting to that picture? So yeah, the time and space is seriously compressed there, and it's distorted in a lot of ways. So yeah, thank you.
Good question.
One for Mark. I love your map, your emotion, putting people's emotional stories or memories on the map. Have you considered sharing that map out or making it public to where a larger group of people could contribute to put their stories onto a common map for UAS or something like that?
Yeah, well, that's something that I'm going to focus on in my final project. Like I said, having a lot to do with indigenous cartographies also, that is a passion of mine. But I think that's a great idea because, like I said, it doesn't matter if you've been here 3 months or 30 years, you know, there's going to be some place that means something to you. And to have that mode of mobility and that political formation available, you know, in the long run, it could help with people just knowing that, you know what, you may be a first year student, but you're not alone because, you know, everybody else can come in and then comment on your place that you feel emotionally tied to, and they can say, hey, I do too, you know, or, you know, I do and this. So it can be used as a very crucial network for a lot of people.
So I'd probably add to that, you know, to consider, are we degrading those spaces in any way by putting our own personal stories on them or desecrating them? Or maybe by allowing someone else to comment on it, or like there's in that.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I would hope that it would be used for the better, but in this time now, you never know. But yeah.
Celeste?
This is more about, I think it was Eva's mountain story, but what kind of social change do you think would occur if we didn't post those pictures and actually fully lived in the moment and didn't attach ourselves to the outside or our homes?
I would say because, like I had mentioned, nature itself is just this idea, and we've seen through history how it's changed. We used to, you know, way back, wilderness, you didn't go into it. It was evil, dangerous, and we've seen throughout our history this idea of wilderness changing. Now we go into it, we venture into the unknown. Alaska is known as the last frontier, untouched land still. And I think social platforms like Instagram or Snapchat just keep contributing to that idea of going into the unknown. And so I think if this hypothetical world, we were to not have social media or stop posting about stuff like that, then the idea and the concepts of nature would start to change. I don't know what to, but yeah.
I'm just reminded of, I read somewhere that like the late 18th or early 19th century, people would go on hikes like in England in the Lake Country, they'd actually bring picture frames with them. There's no photography or anything, but they, I mean, these were like upper class people. They, the hobby was like to find a perfect scenery and frame it in a picture frame. So even though it was only in their mind, they still had that idea of capturing an idealized picture of something.
Yeah. Yes.
How do you think, if we can, as a society today, we can push aside the technology and all this things we have in the modern day to become more in touch with the wild man, if you will, inside?
I don't think we can. I think it's absolutely impossible for the world to forget and toss aside the compression that we do literally every day. Even right now, there's a glacier and mountains behind you right now, and you're looking at us. Isn't that incredible to you? Like, why are you looking at us? Even not on technology, construction, homes, buildings, anything that creates a different atmosphere than what you see out that window is compressing not only your space, but also your time within nature. Now, Doreen Macy that we talked about, she writes that human civilization and nature are kept separate. They're separate ideologies, but in fact, that's what creates and contributes to the ideology of separating the two is a separation. And we came from there. Everything that you see right here came from nature. This is nature, and this shouldn't be put aside and on a separate page from what you see outside the window. So perhaps you don't have to do anything, but perhaps keep the mindset of this is nature, I am in nature at this moment. And I guess that will probably contribute to a lesser compression, time and space. But honestly, I think it's impossible to just toss aside the phone, in my opinion.
No, I think it's a good point. This class has really changed my view on a lot of things, but I've also learned that there's no answer to anything. There's no definition like of nature. There's no definition of like these terms there, but because they are constantly changing, and as our society changes, as culture changes, so are these terms that we're learning. But I think the best we can do is to realize this, and maybe as Eli said, like as you go into nature, be thinking more. Maybe like I'm gonna be more conscious about what I'm doing, or possibly posting, or when I do go into nature.
And the thing is, even in that mindset, or with the picture frame example, you are thinking about the future. You are thinking about that, where are you going to post this picture frame, or when and how you're going to change your mindset. Even in changing your mindset, you are taking yourself out of the moment and putting yourself in a conscious state of, I need to be conscious. So even if you do put down your phones and you change your mindset completely, that already takes you out of the moment. So like Eva said, there's society, culture is constantly changing. So the answers in cultural geography, you'll find out, are always ambiguous. And it's quite annoying sometimes. But that's the subject that we chose to study. So
I think it's important to understand also, as they've pointed out, it's kind of, it feels a little dismal, like, oh, you can't change it, like it's just the way it is. But there's also tactics that are involved in this. One of them being political formation, one of them being, getting together with the people that you trust and you feel tied to, and that understand different situations that you're in, or have the same type of mind frame, and organize politically in whatever sense that may be, whatever that means to you. So yeah, whereas we don't have this solid backdoor way out, we have ways together to make change in this effectively. As long as, we have that sort of mentality of looking at this strategy and understanding this tactic that we can use within this strategy to help us all.
To add that, I like to say that sometimes getting rid of your phone isn't always the best. Like it can be a great tool by sharing our individual stories and remembering that this is a place rather than a space. We can share stories and link to people who are experiencing the same things around the world, such as using Instagram or other social medias to share those. And by doing so, you can raise awareness and form political groups. And so it's just really how you use those tools.
I think you've just answered the question that I'm about to ask, but it seems like a paranoid or grumpy person could complain that a lot of these tools are rationed out to us as ways to siphon off our unpaid labor to create bait on social media for advertisers and ways to collect our personal data so our emotions can be exploited to sell us more stuff. So, and maybe that's like the paranoid side, but I guess like the question for Mark or for anybody is like, how do you use tools like Google Earth, for example, in a way that's empowering or individuating or whatever, and not kind of self-exploitative? Especially, I would guess, in comparison to like older ways of mapping, like place names or like stories based on this.
I think older ways of mapping, when you look at a map, you automatically see borders and lines. These represent immobility. You've got zones from the local level. You've got your neighborhoods, down to like your home, your neighborhood, your zoning area, all the way up to your states, your nation, and stuff like that. By using these new technologies, you can take those lines away. Those lines don't have as much impact on you anymore. Your borders are become dissolved, and it kind of gives a person a sense of that extended mobility to incorporate those outside of the mobility range, which gives you mobility and gives others mobility also. So I feel it's just important to express those types of things on there without seeing those lines as as trivial as they may seem to some, they mean things to others, and it does represent certain types of immobility to people. So, and plus with the using of personal emotions to advertise and stuff like that, I don't know. Maybe I'm not real tech savvy on those things, but I know it's like you have like a do not follow kind of thing. I wouldn't know how to answer that real well though. But appreciate the question.
It seems like taking away those borders and replacing them by your own emotions and your own emotional attachments to that space, but also recognizing that other people have those emotional attachments to that space is almost like telling people to just practice empathy. Putting yourself in other people's shoes.
Be nice. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Going back to what I was taught when I was really young, and something that's always been taught, but I know it's been taught by so many people, like you want to do to other people what you want to have done to you. If that's not good for you, it's probably not going to be good for others. So exactly, have empathy, be nice, and by taking those borders away and incorporating everybody else and stopping to listen to what people have to say about things, that can open up a whole new dimension to cartographies and geography of emotions altogether. That's what it is.
I wanted to just comment on something that Morgan said that I thought was really insightful when you were talking about how isolated we are here in Juneau, and how just that concept of mobility, of getting out, whether it's booking a ferry ticket or getting on a plane, requires access to these technology tools in order to be able to have that mobility. And so it's always that double-edged sword, right? Like the technology is it's giving more people a voice to maybe contribute to those geographies instead of just like the colonizers writing the maps or drawing the maps, However, we're really limited to who has access to those new tools. So I like to use it as an opportunity to think about that as another social justice challenge, just in terms of the digital divide and who has access to these tools and how we can empower people to learn to use those tools, and then also just know the dangers of using those tools, like being tracked and having target marketing made towards you. But thanks for this presentation.
Thank you guys for all coming.
Yeah.
We have A's.
Oh, that would be sweet.
Great job, everybody.
Good.
Got you.
Oh,
Let's get out of here.
I think we are.